Many stories have been told, revolving around ghost stories and many other things that have been revolved around supernatural occurrences. But one story was one of the horrifying stories back then years ago when the Pennsylvania Railroad ran through Horseshoe Curve. Just before Horseshoe Curve was an old manor house. The manor house used to be a railroad station many years ago back then in the 1800s. But it was rebuilt as a manor house. It was known as Keystone Manor. A very rich family lived in that house, and they were known as the Keystones. The husband and wife were named Walter Keystone and Jezebel Keystone, and they had 4 kids. They treated their kids with respect, kindness, and respect, and knew that money doesn't get everything they wanted. But however, Walter's brother and his wife thought otherwise. Reginald Keystone and his wife, Karen Keystone, were living in the house on rent at the time. Walter Keystone warned his brother that his attitude would cost him. Reginald Keystone never cared about anyone else. He only cared about money. And Karen Keystone always wanted to have her way by showing that she was better than everyone else. But Walter Keystone warned them that if this attitude kept up, he would kick them out. But Reginald and Karen Keystone didn't care. And what made Walter Keystone even more mad, that Reginald and Karen Keystone trespassed on railroad property. Knowing that it was very dangerous, Walter Keystone warned his brother that trespassing could lead him to get hurt or worse. But as he may have guessed, Reginald Keystone and his wife didn't care. All they cared about was themselves. Many of the engines and people warned them that this attitude would cost them. But as they may have guessed, they never listened. During the time on the Pennsylvania Railroad, Walter and his wife would often take the train to go to work. And their kids would spend the rest of the day spending time watching the trains go by from their house. Walter's kids were very well respected, and they knew that trespassing wasn't right. But unfortunately for Reginald and Karen Keystone, it didn't matter to them. They thought they could get away with anything they wanted. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. It was on the night of October 7th of 1954. During that time, a Pennsylvania Railroad freight train was heading down Horseshoe Curve, speeding down the line at very fast speeds. The passenger train that Walter and Jezebel Keystone were on raced past the goods train, and Walter knew that Reginald and Karen Keystone were going to be in for trouble. Reginald and Karen Keystone were trying to mess with the track to see if they could derail a train. Some people and engines say they were laughing when they were doing that, but unfortunately, they weren't laughing when they saw what was coming. When Reginald and Karen Keystone's bodies were discovered next morning, it was a gruesome sight. Their bodies were burned beyond recognition from the firebox, and blood was everywhere. Walter Keystone was very furious that his brother and his wife ignored his warning. After the investigation was concluded, the police concluded that it was an act of sabotage, but ended up costing Reginald and Karen Keystone's life, which ended up both of them to be killed. The engine that was involved in the accident had started having very severe mental hallucinations about the accident and blamed himself for what had happened. But Aiden, LNN 150, who was visiting on the Pennsylvania, told the engine it wasn't his fault, and it was the way of the human error that caused it, not him. After the incident of Reginald Keystone and Karen Keystone, Walter Keystone and his family packed up all their things and moved away from the old house and found a new mansion that is safe, away from the tracks and a safe distance. Walter and his family enjoyed their new home. Many people argued that the manor should be used as a tourist attraction. Others argued that it should be torn down. However, those who knew of its history argued that it should be left alone. And that was that. As of now, Keystone Manor sits next to the line, rotting away as a reminder. I think it's best that if the manor should be left alone. Don't you?